All right. Good evening to our audiences in Asia and good morning to our audiences in the UK. Welcome to the Workforce for Sustainable Tomorrow Skills for New Employment Landscapes digital event hosted by our CMI Hong Kong Regional Board. My name is Samantha and I'm an international coordinator at CMI, and I will shortly be handing over to Michael Wong to begin today's event. If you have any questions during the digital event, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can during the Q&A session. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared with you later for those who have booked to attend. The event recording will also be available on the CMI website and CMI YouTube channel. Now over to Michael Wong, CMI Hong Kong Regional Board member, to begin the event.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this event, this webinar, hosted by CMI Hong Kong Regional Board. I'm Michael Wong, a member of the board of the Hong Kong of CMI, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all today. Let me just have the pleasure to introduce our speaker and the panelists for today as well. They will be showing up in a moment. And first of all, I would also like to mention the background of today's organization involved in this talk. First of all, we have the CMI Hong Kong board, which is the local board in Hong Kong. And we are based in Hong Kong, but we are also opening this webinar to all of you around the world. So welcome here. We have the pleasure of joining hands with UNESCO Hong Kong Association's Global Peace Center. As some of you might know, UNESCO promotes the social, cultural, and economic development around the world. And the Peace Center, the Global Peace Center, is a Hong Kong-based initiative specializing and focusing on peace building and sustainable development. And today's speaker, Ms. Sarah Tam, is the PR chair and media chair of UNESCO Hong Kong Association Global Peace Center. She is an expert in marketing and communications, specializing in digital transformation, strategic marketing, brand and reputation management, and global communications for startup and many multinational companies. And she holds many marketing advisory positions, and she's also very active in supporting social enterprises and NGOs on many initiatives related to education, sustainable development, leadership development, and social innovation. And in the panel today, made up of members from the Hong Kong board, including myself, but also our chair lady, Dr. Paulina Chan. Dr. Chan is the chair of the Hong Kong board and the chair of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, IEEE, in Hong Kong. She is an expert in innovative technology, and she is highly experienced in business development. She's also the principal and the CEO of Global Mutual Innovation Consortium. She's also a member and the Geographic Activities Representative on Diversity and Inclusion Committee of the IEEE Board of Directors. She's also champion of the Imperial College Mentoring Program. And also with us today is Mr. Derek Choi. Derek is the Honorary Secretary of CMI Hong Kong Board. He is also Director and Senior Advisor of Path Leader Education Consultants. He is highly educated as an educator and experienced educator, but also successful as a serial entrepreneur. Among his many volunteer positions, Derek is the Technology and Engagement Member of the LSE Alumni Association and the Executive Committee Member and the Vice Chairman of the Friends of LSE in Hong Kong. So first of all, we will have Sarah presenting her material today to all of us. And then later on, in the second stage of this event, we will be having a talk of exchange and dialogue between Sarah and the CMI board and the panel that I just introduced. And finally, we'll widen this conversation to include everybody here today. And we encourage everyone to participate by sending us questions and also submitting your comments in the chat in the final Q&A part of this event. So without further ado, I'd like to pass this to Sarah. Sarah, please enlighten us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. First of all, on behalf of the UNESCO Hong Kong Association for Peace Center, I would like to thank you for CMI for inviting me to this panel and to discuss this interesting and important topic on workforce for a sustainable future. It very much ties to what our Peace Center is supporting and advocating, which is a better ecosystem for lifelong learning and education. I'm Sarah Tam. I'm the co-chair for this year's Futures of Education Initiative in Hong Kong. I also sit on the management committee of the Peace Center, supporting their PR and media effort. So before we begin, I would like to ask you a question. Today, we are going to talk about sustainability and also our work in the future. I want you to join us to vote and to let me understand you better what you're thinking joining this webinar. What do you think will be the world's greatest challenges in 2050? I think you can see from, I think the CMI team will help us to put the poll link on the YouTube channel and you can vote. This will help us to frame what we're going to discuss today. Thank you. Let's wait a minute or so before the answers come up. I see some similarity in terms of percentage for now for the top challenges. Very interesting that nobody's voting for technological change. Well, I'll let you vote. All right. Great. Well, it seems that the top challenges that among our audience on our minds are environmental crisis, economic inequalities, obviously war that is still going on in a lot of different parts of our world, injustice. Very interesting. Obviously, you know that there's no right or wrong answer, and thank you very much again for your input. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I have to keep saying that because the CMI is helping me to control the slides. There's obviously no right or wrong answer, but what we can be sure of is that we're living in a world of challenges. And these challenges not only affect the way we live, but also how we work. And it should also affect how we learn so that we can build the capacity needed for a sustainable future. Widening social and economic inequalities, climate change, biodiversity loss, political conflicts, disruptive technologies, multiple and overlapping challenges and other emerging disruptions, such as the pandemic, have significantly impacted the world that we live in. People have more time with their family with lockdowns and work from home with the pandemic. They have allowed us the window to ask ourselves whether we are climbing the correct career ladder, what's the purpose for work, and how do they balance their family and life. And most important of all, a lot of people are asking how can they positively contribute to some of these challenges that humans are facing. You can see this happening in front of us every day because there are more and more people quitting their current jobs, changing their occupations, and more activists asking questions and fighting for what they believe in. The world of work is changing very fast. Next slide, please. And it's very important for us to map out what is important for us. And it's important to map out how we sustain ourselves, how do we create healthy and sustainable and diverse new work models for the future. This interesting chart, I actually got it from the World Economic Forum, who identified more than 250 global topics. It's 293 to be precise. Looking at the topics such as climate change, artificial intelligence, future of work, education, and many, many others. With all these different challenges around us, how do we decode, understand, and zoom in so that we know what is relevant for us, what is important for our work, what is important to our community and the globe? Say, for example, technological disruptions are creating different challenges and opportunities for the workforce. Technology moves much faster than how we change our education and training system. Now, we must address the gap and design new work and learning models in order to face the challenges and build a sustainable futures for ourselves. We need new work models for the global economy that is rapidly digitalized. Around an estimated 70% of new value created over the next decade will be based on digitally enabled platforms. We also need people with better soft skills to help increase our adaptability and also to develop better technologies, algorithms, machines, so that we can better equip ourselves for the new dynamics. Again, according to WEF, a report that they published, the top 10 skills by the end of year 2025 are soft skills such as creativity, leadership, and flexibility. While education can generally provide a basis for future reskilling, specific education curricula cannot remain fixed because standard career paths continue to evolve and become less linear than ever before. For example, one single organization cannot provide all the soft skills alone, and certainly not for the duration of a person's life. Therefore, the creation of learning systems require a lot of input from public and private institutions. In general, more emphasis should be placed on collecting and collaborating between government, businesses, civil society organizations to design learning and education. With that, next slide, please. I would like to introduce more about the Future of Education initiative. Education is UNESCO's top priority because it is a basic human right and the foundation for peace and sustainable development. Knowledge and learning are humanity's greatest resource and the basis for renewal and transformation. To respond to some of these challenges that we've talked about and invent alternatives, we have to rethink education. The International Commission of Futures of Education was established by UNESCO in 2019. It is an initiative to call for imagination on how knowledge and learning can shape the future of humanity and the planet. The initiative incorporates extensive public and expert engagement and aims to catalyze a global debate on how education needs to be rethought in a world that is becoming more complex, uncertain, and definitely more fragile. The report was published last year in November. More than 1 million people expressed their hopes, fears, and ideas. I would like to share this video which presents all these contributions and highlights the process of co-construction of this report for Futures of Education.
In our day and age, no longer do we allow the future of the planet to be dictated from one location. Futures must be locally and democratically envisioned. After all, it's only through collective and local actions that the futures we want can be made.
UNESCO is embarked on an ambitious Futures of Education initiative. Over the past 2 years, 1 million people from around the world have offered their ideas on how education can transform the future. Some participated in webinars where teachers, parents, business leaders, and researchers exchanged ideas. Children and youth debated with political leaders. Others offered their suggestion in writing from every corner of the planet. Some submitted art showing what they hope and fear for education in 2050. People participated in surveys and polls on key issues in the futures of education. Why do we need to learn? How? What should we learn? When and where? This global collective intelligence formed the backbone of a new report from UNESCO's International Commission on the Futures of Education. But the most important steps still lie ahead. The report is just a start intended to mobilize discussion and action. It is up to you to take forwards, implement, and improve the proposed principles and recommendations. Become part of the transformation. Let's reimagine our futures together.
In our
Thank you. If you can help to go to the next slide, please, Mike. I think we will skip the vote and save it for a later time. I want to talk about this report that we've just talked about. Education, the way we organize teaching and learning throughout life has long played a foundational role in terms of transformation of human societies. It also connects us with the world and one another because it's a common theme across societies. The report proposed that we can best renew education by building a new social contract for education that can repair past injustice while transforming the future. This means that we need to re-examine some of the agreements between corporations, governments, and the society. And there's definitely a lot of reasons to be hopeful. After we talked about all these different challenges around the world, we always know that education can help us some way or the other to refresh some of the thinking and also to educate a new generation so that we can face the challenges and tackle some of the problems. The report from UNESCO, which was published last year, asked us to reimagine a few things, and they summarize in 4 different areas. The first is definitely why we learn. I think we have to go back to the purposes of education and purposes of work. Why are we learning, and why are we learning in order to work? Should we look into education to help us think about individuals, communities, and also countries? How do we help the society to transform? And the second area is what we learn. A lot of times, if we look back at our schools and how we were educated since childhood, a lot of the content of learning were to prepare us for work. But now, today, the world of work is changing so quickly. Are we equipping our children or even adults for the future of work? So today we often see organizations look into the different subjects and interconnected challenges and see whether we have creative ways to solve problems. So the thing that we need to ask ourselves is, are we learning what we need to learn? The third is how we teach and how we learn. What are the methods? How are we collaborating between different institutions like we talked about? Are we doing it virtually, or are we doing it face-to-face? Is it through our work, or is it when you're in a vocational training? How are we going to teach the future education or even adults, like we've talked about? so that they can solve some of the greatest challenges that human race is facing. And the fourth is how we organize the educational spaces. Schools definitely are very important in the educational process, but are we supporting organizations and businesses to transform and widen the education ecosystems and networks of learning spaces across the ecosystem? I think that's something that the report is asking us to think about. To summarize, next slide, please. The Futures of Education initiative is asking us how we can look into education and look at what should be continued. And we also want to ask what should be abandoned and do less. Next slide. And also, last but not least, what should be created and refreshed. So these three important questions are very important for us, looking at how we make a more sustainable future for our world. So I would like to look closer into Hong Kong, where I'm based, and the Futures of Education Forum that we've hosted since 2020. Next slide, please. Last year, we collaborated, we meaning the Peace Center, collaborated with Ipsos, an international independent research firm, to look into the different topics around education and future of work among the Hong Kong people. The key topics that we look at were humanity challenges, purposes of education, Hong Kong's education systems in terms of skills, focus, and priorities, and also looking into the Greater Bay Area opportunities in the education field. You can see that some of the findings here are very much in line with what we've talked about just now. A lot of the respondents from the local community want different kind of education and also to reskill some of the reskill the workforce that is no longer very suitable for what we are trying to tackle in the current world. The top ranked purposes of education for 2050 were scientific innovation, health and well-being, personal sustainability, and peace. It's no surprise that the Hong Kong people voted health and well-being and also peace as the second and fourth as the top ranked purposes, given what's happening in the local community. But it's also interesting to see some of the coincidence, the alignment in terms of the purposes in education in the global survey that was done by UNESCO globally. I think it's also because of the global pandemic that a lot of people are putting more emphasis into work-life balance or work-life integration, and they are much more concerned about their well-being as well as the sustainability of work, as well as how that would integrate into the workplace. Next slide, please. When we asked the Hong Kong community what are some of the greatest challenges that are facing the local community, some of the important issues that we've talked about come alive again, including climate change, environmental crisis, and of course aging population, which is more severe in Asia and certain parts of the world than maybe the Western countries. And you can see students, business professionals, and education have a slightly different view in terms of what is important. And you see a big gap here in terms of economic equality, in terms of the thinking and what is more important than the others. Next slide, please. We can also see a wide expectation gap between what education should focus on versus what is currently available. Education, again, I've just mentioned that is not catching up with the pace of technological disruptions. And the way that we look at education transformation today mainly focuses on how we digitalize the learning process. but actually we're not looking enough in terms of the skills in demand. A lot of the businesses that we interviewed actually want us to focus the education in problem solving skills development, and also helping students to understand what the local environment of work is about. So the expectation must be aligned, and there should be a lot of collaboration between education institution and the businesses, so that we are grooming and growing the skills that we need for the future. Next slide, please. To summarize, the curriculum of the education system in Hong Kong, we found from the survey, is that there are significantly more students, educators, and business professionals agreeing that peace should be a priority for education. And peace doesn't only mean conflict resolution or peace in terms of war, less war and less conflict, but also peace in terms of mindset, individual peace, and biodiversity peace. Also, there are a lot of different views in terms of what the real world is about, from the education sector and the business world. There needs to be connection established and collaboration established between public and private sectors. With this is the end of the presentation, and I hope that there are enough food for thoughts and debate for us to talk about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
To Michael now.
Yes, it's Michael. It's back and me back again. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's great to see that UNESCO Hong Kong Peace Center has done this survey, and also it's great to see that UNESCO itself, as we've seen in the video, has produced a lot of knowledge and insights regarding the future of education. And I'm sure a lot of topics and issues you mentioned actually resonate and echoes with many of us. So next, I would like to bring in Dr. Paulina Chan and also Mr. Derek Choi from Hong Kong. Maybe we can have a little bit of discussion here first before moving on to include everybody else. And first, I would like to turn to Dr. Chan, Paulina, and you are deep experience in business and the tech world, and I know you've also mentored many students, helping their growth and development as well. So, so in the light of what Sarah just shared, what's your take on this? How do you see the challenges for the future and in education for the future from your perspective?
I think education plays a very, very important role now and also in the near future, and definitely in the long-term future of 2050, as Sarah has rightly pointed out. And education is no longer a matter of transferring information nor skill. It is a matter of integrating, disciplinaries, demand and supply of the society, as well as the individual aspiration and development of personality. I think only by doing so, students, which are the future leaders of the society, will definitely, develop well and also contributing effectively, so to the society. I think this is the first point. And then the second point is the consciousness of application of technologies. Not everybody needs to be a technologist, but everybody needs to be aware of the application and the benefit and the use of technology. And Sarah has also elaborated quite well, about, how to use it, smartly. And we also know from Chartered Management Institute, we've done survey that, the awareness of technologies, lies among, digitization and also the proper use of it. So I think this is how we see, education, industry, and as well as professional society, such as CMI, work together, and including, the Peace Center of the UNESCO Hong Kong. I think that would be a very good alliance, to make things happen now and also for the future. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Paulina. We'll definitely come back to you later to seek more of your thoughts. But I agree with you that about your point about integrating things and making it interdisciplinary to address the future needs and training students, and which is important. And I think for us, CMI Hong Kong, we are made of industry leaders and managers, and many of us will find those very important, and it's actually very real in our daily management work and our work life as well. And another, I think, let us turn to Derek. And I know, Derek, you have managed many people in your own company, but also in many other aspects as well. And how would you respond to what we have just heard from Sarah from her sharing? How would you what's your take on this in general? If you could just give us some thoughts from your stance.
Well, thank you, Michael. I think what Paulina said and what Sarah just shared in the presentation is all very important. Education is certainly one of the biggest topics in the next, I would say more than 2050, but perhaps in the next 50 years to come. It's a very long-term project, for the society to change the mindset and to develop the skills for the next generation or the next generation. If we look further ahead, having said that, this is a more long-term project, and education should not just be for students, though. We should keep learning as we are adults, as we in our working life, in our careers, and here I think as employers or employees, we should keep equipping ourselves not just with the skills and knowledge, but also with keeping up with what's happening in the world, being aware of the technology or the societal beliefs and everything that will help us keep us on our toes and help us be more aware of what's happening, and so that we are more easily we can more easily adapt to the change in the society, whether it's technological or else.
And thank you, Derek. I would definitely agree with you. As you can see in our title today, it's about sustainable workforce. So it's not just about transforming students into productive members of the workforce of the future. For all of us who are already working in various industry, it's important to focus on the ongoing development so that we can deal with the challenges of the present, but also ongoing, looking forward into futures as well. So I think what we talk about today will also be applicable to working professionals as well. But now, Sarah, I would like to circle back to you for a bit here. And we know future is somewhere on the horizon, and we talk about future of education. Would you mind just maybe sharing more insights with us regarding what the future? How do you see the future yourself? Certainly, we're already feeling the pressure because there are a lot of problems. You have just asked, the poll is full of problems. What else in the future are you? How would you paint the picture of this future and give us some preview of it from the way you see it?
Right. I think I'm definitely an optimist. I think there are always challenges and there are always problems. But humans are hardwired to solve problems. But maybe we will need to rethink how we approach the problems with creativity and flexibility. I think the world has more complex problems, and that's why critical thinking, collaboration, and complex problem solving are very important soft skills for the future. So in order to equip people for the future job market, which as Paulina just mentioned, is forever changing, not only does the education system has to refresh and rethink the kind of skills that need to be injected into the future generations, but we also have to think about how college and universities and even lifelong learning can support those soft skills development. So it's around providing the correct support for individuals to learn on the job. It's around diversity and inclusion so that people can feel that they are supported by the workforce, and that they can continue to become a successful individual even they change their life stages in different ages. Also looking at the shifting demands for skills across different industries, I think the businesses and also the education system have to update and adapt on a very regular basis. We can no longer afford a 10-year review on the curricula or the labor markets. We have to look at it constantly because the world is constantly changing. But again, I think I'm optimistic that human beings have the ability to change and shift and find the solutions that is needed. That's my personal view.
Thank you, Sarah. And so, of course, I will again. We're great to have Paulina and Derek here. So, Paulina, I think Sarah mentioned a lot and emphasized a lot about soft skills. I mean, there are various kinds of soft skills, such as creativity, adaptability, lifelong learning, ability to do learning, and many others. So, from your perspective, are we doing enough today to foster those skills, or what do you think there's any gaps that might be filling in? How would you like to see things changed to help with the situation?
Well, I can see from two angles. The first thing is the basic syllabus. I think higher education is and continue.
Hello. I think there would be some signals delay. Paulina, are you with us? All right. I'm sure that it will be. She'll return with. I see. So, sorry, Paulina, I apologize. I will miss you for about 10 or 20, 15 seconds because of signal delays.
Yes. Is the applications. The syllabus need to work with social change, as what you put it. And also the students, the parents, the educators would need to have a synchronized mindset. I think both, Derek, Sarah, and you also mentioned that we have to think together. We have to work together. We need to innovate together. I think this is the thing. And the gap is the applications. You let me know, what would an undergraduate students practice the soft skills outside the classroom? The world is well beyond the classroom, especially during the pandemic. The world is the society. How could we, in a professional society today, UNESCO Hong Kong Peace Center, CMI, support the education in order, or higher education, pre-university education, even young adult education, to start learning about this? I think that is where we can find the gaps. And then another thing is don't compartmentalize. This is soft skill and this is hard skill, because it is just the skill for now and also for the future.
That's really excellent viewpoint there, Paulina. I can't agree with you more, because I also agree that apart from identifying the skills, you brought up about the concept of practicing those skills in order to improve on those skills outside the classroom, outside of the workplace. And I think it's very key that I think there's an action we can do to help actualize the kind of transformation we want to see and bring on those changes, that is through practice and to get to reach those skills, right? So Derek, you've been teaching a lot of students. You are an education advisor. You have been fostering the growth of students throughout the student life and also beyond that. So how would you see today's curriculum and perhaps today's vocational training even? How are we doing enough, or should we do more than that? And what's your point of view?
Michael, when you talk about the curriculum, I think we realize, both of us or everyone in this forum, we realize that it's not just one curriculum that we're talking about. globally, I think we are seeing a change. We are realizing a change, the need for change, right? And traditionally, as Sarah's presentation has said, we've been preparing the school curriculums, school curricula has been preparing children, students for the workplace. But as the workplace is changing, the needs are changing, then the curricula are also changing. But are we changing fast enough? That is the question that we should be asking ourselves. In a lot of countries, Western, Eastern countries, we're seeing that the content in the curriculum is increasing the adapting to what we're seeing in the world, but the skills that we are being tested on are the same. So that is one thing that I think that needs to be changed here. While we are more aware of the news or what's happening in the world, the technology, we are still being tested on how to calculate or how to spell or even grammatical mistakes and handwriting and all that. Um, those were more important back then, but nowadays we need to incorporate more critical thinking or creative thinking, or even adaptability into our curricula, and at least in the pre-university section.
That's true. I think in a way we are stuck in the past. I still remember when I was long ago when I applied for a job and I was asked to sit for a 2-hour written test and handwritten test, by the way. So I think it's definitely a discrepancy between what I should be, utilizing in the actual working world and what they are actually seeing at how they define a good worker is. I mean, it was quite appalling. And so I think it's important to update the system assessment and all that to really meet the future needs as well. So thank you very much for the great insights and sharing. I think in the next section we are kind of easy into the next section, which is kind of a Q&A. I think we have received a lot of it's very vibrant response from our audience today. A few questions already in the line. So I think we should. Obviously, I think this question can be directed to Sarah, but I think we can also have Paulina and Derek's contribution as well. I'm sure it will be much appreciated. So first of all, I think we will start by one question here, which is I think it's quite interesting. One of the member of the audience asked, how can cultural competence and competence learning be improved to facilitate workforce sustainability for tomorrow? So Sarah, how important? How do you think? What do you think of cultural competence?
Well, I look at it in a different way, or from a way that companies are adapting to that, because there are a lot of interconnection between geographies right now. No matter you're a local company or a global company, with digitalization, you're actually facing an audience that can come from different parts of the world, just like our webinar today, right? So you can no longer set boundaries in terms of the differences that your audience have. So one of the key things that I think the workforce can look into would be first to equip ourselves in terms of different things that's happening around the world, understanding the differences between different cultures and geographies. Second of all, looking from companies' perspective or business perspective, I think companies can also do more in terms of encouraging a diverse workforce, providing support and also guidance for managers to facilitate and help them to understand how to manage the differences as managers. So there are a lot of things that's happening in the workforce right now, including well-being and also encouraging D&I efforts, so diversity and inclusion, to just provide the support that is needed for the workforce so that they can bring their true selves in and have the psychological safety in the workforce that they can be their true selves. So that also embrace a lot of differences, no matter it's cultural, no matter it's gender diversity or other kinds of diversity. I think that's important for companies to really look at this seriously, and also looking at talents as an asset. That they need to invest in their people so that they can be an employer of choice. So that's something that companies should really be looking at as well. I also think that the cultural competencies that the audience just mentioned. If we look at the world that we're living in right now, there are a lot of I can't say there's a lot, but there are disrespects, there are things that are injustice, there are a lot of things that are not at peace with one another. The one thing that we have to start young is to help people to look into different issues from a different lens and different perspectives. And we have to teach children and even adults to look at problems from different perspectives. And how do we do that? It probably is not just from the proper curricula, not from the education in the classroom, but from the interconnected relationships in the society. I think one famous saying of Chinese is that you bring up a child with the support of your community. And that is very true, because you always want a child to bring up, to understand the differences in the perspective of different generations in the Chinese society. But you also were taught to understand the different thinkings of different generations. And it's almost embedded in the Chinese thinking that you have to respect different viewpoints. And I think it's very much the same for cultural understanding and understanding the differences of people, and just having an open mind to accept that people are different.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think that's a great takeaway for all of us here today from in the audience. I think it's very important to really build the diversity into the workforce and the workplace, and try to, as you said, like you just mentioned, to manage those differences and different perspectives, and also to bring out the positive value from that diversity and different perspectives. I think that would be really key. Thank you very much. So now I should look at Paulina and Derek once again. And Paulina, I know you have an international education background. You graduated from Imperial College, but also you studied in Hong Kong and many places, and you've traveled a lot as well. So you embodied many culture. And what do you think of cultural competence? And do you think that's from what you see in your work, is there any cultural issues play out in work, and how should we address those issues from your perspective?
Yes, thank you, Michael. I do see, two things. Number one, no one likes however, the pandemic has given risen to cultural competence, because you can see the global collaborations and also the awareness, of the disease, and also the vaccine development and also the implementation. This is cross-culture, and this is really, no matter, what background, how diversified, everybody is looking into the same goal. So this is unfortunately a bad thing, but lead to a bonus, of the pandemic, for the last, 3 years. And then the second thing I want to give example is the cross-cultural competence. Just take a look at Chartered Management Institute. We have Asia Pacific regions, of different subcultures and cultures, and we integrate with the culture and the corporate culture of the UK and Europe. And with many of our experience, we also integrate the culture of the United States and so forth. and Africa and many parts of the world. Now, only by doing so, we accomplish the theme of professionalism. I think this is very important. And only by doing so, we have accomplished corporate culture. I work and I chaired a multidisciplinary and cross-cultural and intercontinental think tank, as my profession. I work with many professionals from different culture, religious, nationalities, background. However, why are we able to work together? Number one, we understand each other. We realize what yes mean to some culture and what ya mean to another culture. So by knowing that, we know exactly what needs to be done, for example. And then another thing I can see is the expression of needs and also the expression of wants. Now, by doing so, and many of us are in technology field, we develop artificial intelligence, we develop deep learning. And by the way, these two occupied in many surveys as the top 40% of the future needs, of technology applications. How are we going to teach a machine to try to respond? I wouldn't use the word think, but try to respond to different cultural needs. So these are the challenges of cultural competence. When we bring it back to sustainable workforce, how would we sustain a workforce to be quality, healthy, maintainable, and sustainable? The corporate culture is very important. The geographic culture is also very important, and also the general acceptance of diversity, equality are both very important. You need to proceed. So this is how I see, and I study, in the UK with 170 nationalities in one campus. That's half of the United Nations are studying on the same campus as where I was. And I work, across continents. So that has equipped me with lots of understanding of cultural competence. And I cannot say how important it is pivotal to the development and success of any society, organizations, and companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina. And I think the speaking of multiculturalism and cross-cultural and diversity, I think Hong Kong is a prime example of that. And in CMI Hong Kong, we do have people from all around the world in Hong Kong, which is an international financial and center, and also economic powerhouse. And so we do have a lot of members from Hong Kong from all corners of the world and all different backgrounds. I think it's important that help us to kind of grow our sense of cultural competence as well, as by having that diversity there. So, and also quickly, I just want to seek Derek's point of view as well. I mean, in your work, for example, how do you maintain the cultural diversity, or how would you is there any policy or any way of practice that you would recommend to us in terms of on the cultural side of things?
Thank you, Michael. Apart from the workplace, so in the workplace as well as on a couple of boards that I am, of which I participate, one of the big topics that we are aware of is that diversity and inclusion, right? This is not just within. This is not just with different nationalities, ethnicities. But it also includes the sex, like masculine, male and female ratios, the ages. We must, as Sarah said, while we must be open-minded and to accept different points of view. I think as an employer or as a management of a company or of an organization, we must also actively, intentionally seek change in our composition of our employees, of our workforce, as well as the top management as well, right? This with people coming from different backgrounds, when we include people of different ethnicities or gender or ages, as well as different thoughts, right? We are actively exposing ourselves to different points of view, and we can learn to be more open-minded and accept what people think, right?
Thank you, Derek, for sharing. I think that's really insightful as well. And I'm mindful of the time. We have about 5 minutes left in this webinar, but I think we have a lot of questions in line. But I would like to maybe pick one or two more for the final part of this webinar. And I think there's one from as a question submitted before this event. I think I don't want to miss it out, and which is concerning mental health and wellness. And I think it's quite an important aspect as well. We've talked about a whole person education, and so how do we support mental health and wellness in the workplace, and what does it look like for employers and employees? And maybe can I have Sarah, Paulina, and also Derek, maybe each of you give maybe a 1 minute quick answer to that. Maybe we start from Sarah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. The cost of mental health is increasing globally. That's something that we always see from different kinds of reports. And I think all the employees know that an unhealthy workforce is actually going to kill businesses. So the top agenda of no matter it's the healthcare sector or the different kinds of businesses and governments, they're looking at ways to de-stress people and also help them to overcome some of the mental health challenges. That includes some of the things that we've talked about, looking at whether it's sustainable for people to work in the way that they're working, providing support, mental health support in the workplace, increasing diversity and inclusion agendas, and also looking into the public health sector to see how they can support people with mental health issues. But I think looking at this issue, we have to look at it from a prevention perspective rather than looking at it as a problem to minimize. We have to look at it proactively. Why are we facing this issue more and more in workplace and even at school? Are we stressing people too much? Is it too demanding for people? Or do we have a lot of mismatch in terms of work or education or the general the way of life? So I think society must look at it from a holistic perspective, and again, employers and the wider society should collaborate and find solutions together. It's not something that can be solved from just one angle, I'll have to say. But definitely employers are already looking at it very seriously because they realize that this problem is actually eating into their workforce.
I see. Thank you very much. And in the interest of time, maybe I should ask Paulina and Derek as well, but maybe each of you can give us just a quick suggestion or recommendation on a topic of mental health. Paulina, what's your recommendation?
I think mental health is a matter of self-confidence, and it is a consequence of physical health and vice versa. So individual, family, friends, schools and public health all needs to work well together. And without the mental health, we cannot have satisfied employees, and we do not have, satisfied employers. So, this is how I see, act boldly, innovate broadly, and execute equitably. Thank you.
That's extremely well said. Thank you, Paulina. Derek, what about your recommendation of action?
I think mental health, as both Paulina and Sarah had said, it's very important, and it not only comes from the external factors, but also internally. in order to support mental health and intention in the workplace, I think it's a little bit similar to cultural competence. We need to be aware of it, aware of not only ourselves, but the others around us, right? As employers, we have to be very aware of how our employees are doing, rather than looking only at short-term gains or short-term productivity, but the long-term wellness of the workforce, so that they can continue to work and produce as an employer or as a management, right? That is not only a responsibility to your employees, but also to the society.
Yeah, thank you. I think we should.
Yeah, 2 cents.
Mhm. Thank you. I think we should all keep that in mind, the awareness of that. And finally, I think we should also invite Sarah to maybe give us a summary of a recap of today's main takeaways for our audience, if you don't mind.
Sure. If there's one thing that I want you to remember is that education is not just for the education sector, that it's for everybody. And at different ages, we can improve our knowledge and skills from different perspectives. So if you would like to find out more about futures of education, you can visit our website, the UNESCO Global website, or the UNESCO Hong Kong Association Global Peace Center website. You can find more stuff there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you much indeed. And also, please don't forget, if you're interested, you can also come join us at CMI Hong Kong. Sign up as a member, as a manager. We welcome your participation, and we look forward to seeing you again in future events, here online or in physical events. So once again, thank you very much to Ms. Sarah Tam, Dr. Pauline Chan, and Mr. Derek Choi for being here with us today. Thank you very much, and for the support from the CMI staff, Samantha and Michael as well.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that's it for today's session. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and thank you, Michael, Sarah, Paulina, and Derek, for your insights and expertise. Don't forget, if you're a member of the CMI, you can log into Management Direct using the link in the live chat, and you can find a wide range of exclusive and practical development resources and much more. And if you're not a member or subscriber, you can join our community via the link that's also in the live chat to gain full access to our Management Direct portal. You can also sign up to the free CMI newsletter for the latest trends and tips for managers and leaders. Please do take a few moments to let us know your thoughts on today's event by completing the evaluation form, which we have included in the live chat. Thank you again for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.